Once upon a time, you had it out with a Facebook fact checker, and I just thought it would be appropriate to play that video.
Alan, where do you get off telling me what I can put in my headlines?
Well, I don't. You can put anything in your headline that you want. However, if you want to share it on the Facebook platform, my company has been contracted by Facebook in order to make an assessment through which they could put a label on it.
Why should an American citizen have to bypass a filter from you to read a news story on a news website?
Because they need, we're adding additional information. We're not censoring. Censoring is when you take something down. That's not what's happening here. Your story.
Alan, you've delivered several flags onto the National Pulse's page and then had a 30-day suspension on that page. Is that censorship or not?
It's not censorship.
The world will want to know what qualifies you and your staff to be making these judgment calls when clearly you're getting it wrong. You've got, as far as I'm concerned, you've got it wrong with us almost every single time. You've got it wrong with Jack Posobiec here.
Not Jack, but...
Okay, so you're telling me you've never got anything wrong now.
Show me something we got wrong, and we will correct it.
You're telling me you've got nothing wrong.
Raheem, they're so smug, man. They really do genuinely think they're above us, do they not?
Oh, I've had Alan Duke, who you saw there, calling my cell phone personally, also making veiled threats one-on-one when we've had conversations one-on-one. And you know, credit to somebody like Alan Duke for coming on the show and having the audacity to stand up for his censorious perspectives. But at the same time, the rationale isn't that he wants to be transparent. The rationale is he's smug, and he knows that there's very little that we can do to stop him and his team at Lead Stories from censoring people like you and I. Now, let me just walk you through Lead Stories for a second. It's an almost entirely Democrat-funded, Democrat-run operation. Most of their donors that work for the company give political donations to Democrats. And when I say most, I mean 95%. Most of their staff come directly from CNN, like Alan Duke himself there, by the way. And it's also based overseas. Lead Stories is effectively based, and their technology is based out of Brussels in Belgium, and people will be scratching their heads and wondering why a foreign company that is staffed predominantly with CNN staffers who give money almost entirely to Democrat candidates across the United States have a where they get off censoring publishers in the United States of America. And now I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I went back to this Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black, and when he was asked, he was actually in a Supreme Court opinion from, I think, 1945 antitrust case involving the Associated Press, and he said this, I'm going to read it here. He said, quote, "The widest possible dissemination of information from diverse and antagonistic sources is essential to the welfare of the public. The First Amendment affords not the slightest support for the contention that a combination to restrain trade in news and views has any constitutional immunity." And that is exactly what Alan Duke is trying to do. They are trying to restrain the trade in news and views, and they are trying to narrow the dissemination of information, not provide the widest possible and most antagonistic sources against governmental and corporate authority and power. And when you look at it from a philosophical basis, most Americans will know in their heart and in their guts that what's going on here is fundamentally wrong. But then you look at it from a technical perspective as well, and you know it's wrong. That Facebook contracts Lead Stories to shut me up. But TikTok, which is owned in part by the Chinese Communist Party, also contracts with Lead Stories to censor things on that platform that they do not like. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't suppose that there has ever been a time in human history where corporate interest and centralized communist government control interest happen to also be in the interest of the wider public. That is the dichotomy we face right now. And the question is how we assail these people. And I think we assail them through transparency. We go through all of their documents, we go through all their relationships, we go through all their data, we go through all their staff, we go through all of the donations that they make, we go through their offices. I went through a propaganda censorship site like Lead Stories. It was called the Healthy Indian Project, that is retained by Google. And Jesse, I found that it was a shanty shack on the border of Bangladesh, where they were employing people who are not trained to do this, who have no experience in doing this, but they were trained to censor my content on American social media sites. It is utterly baffling.